Okay, Walk, Listen, Create. Many of you know this already, but Walk, Listen, Create is a not-for-profit, and we're out there supporting artists, performers, and writers who make work to be consumed on foot. That's a bit of a niche. Anyway, it's really nice to see you all here. And let me introduce you to Claudia, whom I know, and many of you know already, and probably don't need any introduction at all. But this is what she wrote on our website. And Claudia is a walking curator whose interest lies in path making as a cultural practice. With friendship at heart, her walks combine a desire for a slower pace of life with socio-politically and environmentally sensitive issues. For more than a decade, her walking art projects have varied from short to long, in her vicinity or further afield, connecting places, communities and people along the way. Her walking prose promotes thinking aloud. Her projects include Walking Lunches, 2010, ongoing, a play on corporate working lunches, Home to Home, a Brexit-stimulated 1,800-mile walk from the artist's home in Huntley, Aberdeenshire, to her childhood home in Bavaria, of which some of you may have come to a previous Café, which Claudia was our guest and talked about that. Slow Marathons, 2012, ongoing, annual themed group walks, questioning the competitive nature of marathons, and From Mountain to Sea, a 150-mile walk across Aberdeenshire to mark the COVID period. Well, Claudia, you're about to tell us about another long walk. This one, I think, turned out to be 700, although you called it Slow Coast 500. So I'm sure you're going to reveal why that's the case. So over to you.
Okay, so it was called Slow Coast 500, which is a bit of a strange name, but actually the inspiration was taken from something that that's called oh no, what is this? Sorry guys, it's not moving. Oh yeah, it does now if I do this. Okay, something called North Coast 500. The ultimate road trip. This was sort of brought in as a kind of marketing idea, and that if you drive 500 miles around the north of Scotland, that will bring more tourism and therefore more economic benefits and affluence to this quite remote area. But and this has taken off incredibly. So that many cars these days drive there. And now people are really thinking of what are the real benefits because things have turned around. Tourism has led to the fact that in lots of the places it's very difficult for people to find homes themselves. There is a lot of, turned into particularly second homes and Airbnb, but also that the ambulances sometimes can't come through because there's a lot of big vehicles, camper vans in very small roads. And other things, does it bring the benefit? Because people tend to sort of often not actually eat in the places, and so I'm not taking really a side here, but it has been sort of come up as a more and more criticism about it, but especially because more and more people use it as a racing ground. So it has become a challenge to do those 500 miles in as fast as you can, and if possible within 24 hours. So as you know, I'm very keen on walking, and walking by nature is simply very, very slow. And I had then the great opportunity to work with Rosie Naylor, who I think is just joined us here, from Artwalk Projects. It's a fantastic organization based in Portobello in Edinburgh. And they often take walking as a starting point for a number of their projects that deal with climate change and political situations. And this year, the title of their year was called Vessel, and there was, I think, 6 or 7 of us who responded to this in different ways. So for me, the Vessel was the north sea coast of Scotland. So let me just see if I can. And I started at Dunnet Head, which is the highest point in in Scotland, the highest point, British mainland point. And it's really where the North Sea meets the Atlantic. And you can see here already over to Orkney on that picture. And yeah, that's where I started. And my intention was to walk the complete North Sea coast of Scotland down to almost Berwick-on-Tweed. And I started at the beginning of July, and I finished, I had a break in September, but I finished at the beginning of October. So, yeah, I don't really have a map of the route yet, so bear with me, because this has only finished in October, and I've been sort of also mainly busy with sorting out my photos. I came home with over 1,800 photos, and I'm still, how do you cluster them? So here is my route, and daily I took notes on the stretches we did, and intention was actually 500 miles, that's what I thought it was, but in fact it ended up with more at 700 miles. Yeah, so as I started I'm looking at what tourism today, what benefit does it bring? And I have been working especially in Huntly, and this is what people call these days placemaking for many years. And I started questioning what is placemaking or what is place breaking. And so I took quite a lot of photos of touristy things that people do, because, and I don't want to exclude myself at all, when we go to other places, we kind of tend to do what the tourist industry suggests to us. And some of these pictures are taken here at John O'Groats, which is a big destination. But so I then moved on. But also what I did is a number of other things on a daily basis. And one is I wrote a postcard home to Rosie daily. And yeah, I always took whatever postcard I could find. And if I couldn't find one, I made one myself. It was a bit of a makeshift one then. And I then sent that on a daily basis. And at the end, you see here on the left-hand side, we had an exhibition, and there was a number of things as well that was shared with the other artists, but she put on this wonderful carousel with all my postcards. And the writing I'm using is that kind of writing that Andrew was just saying, is a strange kind of mix between I call it thinking out, but it's a mix between poetry and diary. The thing that is that walks are by nature so linear, you know, and so if you just write this linear way, then you always have, on next I saw the sunshine, and next time we went around the corner, and then there was a nice village, and how do you get away from that? So if you want to see more of this, please visit my website. You find quite a bit on that in the blog section. So these are the postcards. And through them, these were basically my records. I didn't keep another diary than that. But the other thing I did is I brought with me a tablecloth. And it is the sort of an orange. The idea was that there's the orange color of the British Ordnance Survey map, and onto it I drew the coastal line of Scotland, and on a daily basis I embroidered the stretch I did. So I call it step by step and stitch for stitch. I sort of more and more embroidered that. And I also embroidered little sort of, I embroidered all the tourist attractions on it. But when I said it was just like at any map, it was just a kind of sign, a dot. And I also drew on it what I called the Slow Coast 500 distractions. And there were something like 190 of the kind of things that you only see when you're walking. That's what I meant. But you see a few more shortly. So this is my tablecloth, which I carried along. I would have loved to show it to you today because it's very close to my heart, but Andrew already said this was planned for quite a while, but I'm currently in Munich, because I had to visit my mother, and therefore I didn't bring it back to Munich. And but here you see the tablecloths in many different situations. On the top here you see sort of the embroidery on the second day. It just was as far. No, it probably was the first day. So the first little thing was driving from Thurso to Dunnet Head, and then I started walking. The first day was on Castle May, and then to John McRoad's on this place, going past. That would be a village called Kies. So yeah, you see the tablecloth in the making. It is serving as a picnic blanket. It is serving as a kind of diary, as a long-term reminder, as a talking point, and it is also serving as an opportunity to chat with people. And what it should always be is it always should stay as a tablecloth. That's definitely kind of important to me. It should not be hung one day on a wall or so. Good. So as mentioned, I had so many photos, and I don't know how to best do a presentation like this, but I then decided to cluster these photos into different themes. On a few of the themes I'm going to show you now. So here you see the path, and we had a lot of empty beaches. In fact, so many empty beaches, and a lot of sunshine. And here is Duncansby Head, and sometimes it was quite precarious, especially up in the very north, and because often the path was so overgrown that the bracken is really higher than yourself, and so on the right hand side there might be a barbed wire from a fence, but on the left hand side the cliffs go very far down, and sometimes you're not really sure, are you actually walking on a path or on some roots of the bracken? Yeah, here you, for example, see that. And yeah, sometimes the path can be a road, and sometimes, but in most cases it was very remote places. And the other place that was, so we went through, I went through quite a few local authorities, and the other difficult one is actually sort of more my home county, which was Aberdeenshire, further south of Aberdeen, where it became sometimes extremely difficult to walk. And at one point I said, enough is enough. And I was searching for a road with a friend who accompanied me on the day, and thought we have no chance here to chat because it was so precarious. So now another one is here, the kind of the rocks and stones. And at this point I should say that Nick was accompanying me on the walk, and he is a geologist, and on a daily basis collected a small stone along the path. And it's interestingly is that how the geology of Scotland, I had no idea about this, but is organized along certain faults. That you have the Highland faults in the north, and that then in Inverness, where you reach the Caledonian Canal, it's called the Grampian Faults, and then further south in Stonehaven is another fault, which right now slipped my consciousness. What was that called? Although I should know. So that's the geology. A feature that I found very interesting all the time is almost this sort of these World War I and II constructions that are along the whole coastline to be found. Sometimes, as you can see here, already the sea has quite taken over, and sometimes they make out beautiful constructions that lend themselves sort of to kind of Corbusierian thinking, and you almost want to do an art gallery there. Like this one is almost an amphitheater, and yeah. So another set is, because I come from an art background, is really the art and craft that you find on the way. I mean, as you can see, I'm just showing you a selection of things, but you find a lot of things, and you find also a lot of what many of would us call kitsch. But I only came across one gallery, one sort of white space gallery, and that is the lovely Time Span up in Helmsdale. Here is a Kenny Hunter sculpture that is in North Berwick, and this is a sculpture. I'm sorry, right now I can't remember the name of the sculptor. There's a woman, and she made a sculpture in Eyemouth in Berwickshire, where she depicted all the 184 women and their children who, when there was in the around I think 1884, an enormous flood, and many. She depicted all the women and the children, but 184 of those seamen drowned in one night. And yeah, I found that a very moving piece. And interesting, now she also did a similar sculpture in smaller villages, where then it was just a smaller thing, but sculpture, but she also, there would still be like 30 people or something on it. Good. Now, when you walk along, so this is another one cluster called caravans and camper vans. You do find a lot of them. They're all white. I'm not so sure why, but they're all white. And but when you walk along, it is actually interesting. You find sort of patterns, and quite often it has to be said, apart from people that I brought myself, that met me and walked for a day with me or something, or that I met in the villages, I only met 4 walkers. One of them was a young German woman who we met around Berrydale, and she was with a big rucksack on her tent, and she walked. Her intention was to walk the Scottish coast, and she had already got as far as Berrydale from Berwick-on-Tweed. So she was quite amazing. She was maybe, I don't know, young woman, 25 or something. The next one we met around Brora was a man who already came from all the way from Land's End. So he was walking from Land's End to John O'Groats, and I tried to sort of chat to him, and he was a bit sort of, oh, what you're doing is nothing compared to what I'm doing, and so. But then I suddenly said, well, why do you have such a small rucksack? How come? Because it was even smaller than me. And then he said, oh, it's because my wife has a camper van and she drives along. And in the evening he meets her, and yeah, so it wasn't that heroic to me at the end anymore. I also met 3 men who did the opposite route. They started in Berwick up on Tweed and wanted to go to Dunnet Head, but they always do just one day a month, and they do this over many years, I think. And so that was quite interesting. And the last person I met was a man who calls himself the Warrior Walker, and he had some problems, maybe mental health problems or something, and he was depressed. And so somebody suggested to him, why don't you walk the whole coast of Britain? And so he did. It took him almost 2 years. And after that, he liked it so much that he walks now the other way around. And we came across him at some point. So these were actually the only people that we met. But you meet, when you come nearer to a village, you meet dog walkers, of course. And then once you sort of, the next step, you tend to see either a caravan park or a golf course. And then you come to the village, and the other way around, it goes the same way. Dog walker, caravan park, golf course. And that was quite an interesting pattern. Whereas in between, there were very long days without nobody, not one person to meet. There was amazing stretches. Some people ask me always, which day was the best? But one day was better than the next. And also people say always, what a challenge. It's not a challenge. The biggest challenge is to decide to do it. Otherwise, it's just a pleasure. You get up and you know exactly what you're doing on that day. And that's what you just do. And the biggest challenge is sometimes in the evening to have to deal with your Instagram and these kind of things, but booking places ahead. But I couldn't say which place I liked most. But if I had to say, for me it was very amazing to walk between Fraserburgh and Peterhead, because they're both places which are quite sort of have a negative reputation. They're a bit run down, and there's a lot of poverty there, and also because it is in Aberdeenshire, which is sort of my own county, and I found it amazing. There is a beach that is over 20 kilometers long, and it's completely golden and totally clean, and there's not one person you meet on the way until you meet the first dog walker near Peterhead. So good. I also want to, of course, mention all the people. I crowded them in here, but I couldn't put more pictures in. So a few of them might be here today. I just saw Helen here. We had a great time in Golspie. There is also Jean, who had a great time always in Helmsdale. And so there was many more, but there were people sort of who joined on the walk, or who were kind of here in Forgan, in Fife, they organized a group walk, and in the same was in Helmsdale. Yeah, and here we had a very lovely welcome coming into Portobello, where then the art festival took place. And of course I should mention Nick, who is, he is up here. These are, by the way, the three men who do the same walk, but the other way around, and only one per month. And Nick, who is my great companion in life, work and walk. And then you reach the border, and this is it. So you can see, this is the border, this little fence. It was incredibly windy. So, I mean, this is the best photo I could take of the border. And Nick loves making drawings, and he made one when you come from Scotland. There is nothing, and when you come from England, there is a very big sign saying "Welcome to Scotland," which was lovely. But you had to go over the border to see that. And so this is like 5 miles from Berwick-on-Tweed, in a place near a place called Burnsmouth. And so I'm reaching the end. We had an exhibition, I mentioned that a little bit beforehand, where you see the postcards, and where you see the tablecloth being laid out, and the many daily stones that Nick collected, which I feel make a really good asset to the tablecloth and the project. So what basically it is, when you, from a more art point of view, is that you sort of put lots of layers to a walk. So the layers are the stones, the people you meet, the tablecloth, the paths you have. I have much more clusters. I have also a cluster on signage, and I have a cluster on, I can't just think right now, but I've made more packages, but I felt that the talk would become too much just now. Sorry. Are you still there? But what I wanted to say is the important is really the things that you see that you might never see if you don't walk it. If you're driving, you tend to end up where the road takes you, and then you may walk in each direction. But you see a lot of things. Like here, for example, this is a boat. This is actually on that stretch between Peterhead and Fraserburgh, or Fraser and Peterhead, a boat that sank over 100 years ago. And or a funeral parlor where suddenly somebody invites you to have a cup of tea in his funeral parlor. Or here, St. Fergus, gas plantation, or sort of loads of things that are quirky or different that you may not otherwise come along. And that's what, to me, the importance is about evoking such a stretch. Okay, so that's it. That's the end of my tablecloth. And when it's my clothes hanging on the line, and I want to thank Andrew to invite me today, but also all the walkers with me and the friends and all the people who fed us, which was fantastic. And if you want to see more, if you haven't enough, there is quite a lot on my website, pictures as well as this poetry and more my thoughts. So in total it took 63 days. It was in the end 715 miles, and my step counter, my pedometer said 1,652 and 65 steps. Okay, so thank you.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Well, yeah, well done, Claudia.
Okay.
You can stop sharing your screen.
I hope so. I don't do this. I want to do this, but I don't know how to. Give me a minute. Okay. Is it gone?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
I think I overruled your screen share there.
All right, and thank you. I'm grateful.
Well done. You've stunned everybody into complete silence. There's nothing in the chat. I'm hoping that, some people will ask a question and want to maybe put your name in the chat, and then I'll come to you. You don't need to actually write the question out. Just say, I have a question, or I want to make a comment. One of the questions I got beforehand, Claudia, was from Jez Hastings. He apologises that he couldn't come tonight, but he asked me whether you felt at any time you felt invisible, that you'd been swallowed by the landscape. And did you want to be swallowed by the landscape at any time?
Oh my goodness, interesting question. I mean, the landscape is endlessly stunning on the Scottish coast. It made me think, I'm actually much more a mountain person. I come more from the Alps, and so I actually never even went on holiday on the seaside or something. So I had to learn a lot about the sea. I was never thinking about the tides. I was always thinking, when I go walking normally, my compass and, the mist and these sort of things, but not so much about the tides. And one time I got completely caught out by the tide. It was pretty awful, to be honest. It was caught out by the tides in a sort of salt swampy area, and at the same time in MOT area. So it was the moment where I thought, is it worse to be shot by MOT people, because they were all red flags around me, or being drowned in a sort of salt marsh in the sea. But swallowed by the landscape, it is true. It is so stunning, and you start also thinking, well, how do I describe this whole thing without being just over romantic? And that I then kind of turned more to those what I call Slocum's 500 distractions, rather than even attempting to give too much. I had actually also one cluster of pictures with a landscape, but I now didn't show them to you because I showed you the path already, and you get an idea. But probably people have this idea anyway of Scotland, and all these photos I take, they don't do it justice. And I can only advise people to try themselves. I don't know if this answers the question, but it's the kind of idea.
Okay, well, Claudia, Helen has put her hand up and said she wants to ask a question, and she wrote Q in the chat, and we immediately get another one from someone whose first name begins with Q. So there's some strange synergy going on. So Helen, Do you want to ask your question?
Yes, Claudia, it's lovely to see you again, and
Yeah, you too.
it's terrific meeting you. Um, I've got lots of things I'd love to talk to you about, but in particular, I'm going to pick up on that question on the feeling that this landscape gives you. And I had a very interesting conversation with an author the other week who, like me, was a blow-in to this part of the world. And she admitted to feeling slightly overwhelmed by the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
And I admitted to feeling vertiginous.
What
So
is that? Sorry, what is that?
I physically feel unbalanced,
Okay.
particularly when I go north, because we have been brought up with a picture of the British Isles, which is which is perpendicular, if you like.
Yeah.
And it really does give me, and it gave her, and presumably others, that sensation of vertigo when you go north.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you do go north, there are very few roads, and the landscape becomes very hard and quite extreme. And I think you described, and I remember you telling me at the time, that walk that you took through the high bracken with the steep cliff on one side, the lack of path, and the wild moor and mountain on the other side. And I just wondered whether actually the words to describe the landscape are not always romantic ones, but quite hard ones.
Yeah.
Not always a welcoming landscape.
I mean, suddenly when you're when you're walking and you encounter these kind of difficulties, the most difficult one, to be honest, was near Stonehaven, and I had a friend before Stonehaven and after Stonehaven. I had each time a friend with me. I think Meep is here actually, and it was so difficult. There were like also in between the bracken there was lots of brambles. And so there are also booby traps on top of it that when you sort of don't know what you're walking at. But there is still this continuous being sort of stunned by the beauty. But I actually want to get away from that because I find sort of very interesting when you come to a quite rundown harbour town like Wick, let's say, or where you sort of normally would arrive and think, oh my God, what is this, you know? Or when you walk through it, it all has its own charm, and you can start understanding why people want to live in places that are maybe less beautiful. So, you know, and I don't know. I mean, what was, of course, landscape-wise amazing, there's these so-called geos up in the north, and I wasn't aware of that. I had never seen anything like that. So sometimes where you think you're doing maybe, on the map it looks like 200 meters, but actually you easily can walk 2 kilometers to get around the geo. It's those who don't know what it is, it's a fold in the cliffs, and they go really steep down, and you walk all the way around it. And you walk actually maybe 300, 400 meters, and then the next geo comes, and it's very slow progress, you know. And this sort of, yeah, I think this sort of handling between, actually they're becoming a nuisance now. I've seen them, but still, I mean, you can't deny the beauty of them.
Great. Well done, Helen. Good question. I know you put another question in the chat, but Quentin, do you want to ask one of your questions?
Okay, so how did the experience of doing the walk develop or change the way in which you'd approach your future work? What did you learn from doing the walk that you'd take forward?
Yeah, that is a really good question. I think what is really important is that you think about the walk well beforehand, and because especially if you want it sort of to be some form of an artwork afterwards, yeah. So because there is a continuous routine, and you come across things that are unexpected, but you sort of discover them maybe on the way. And let's say I would have only thought about the postcards on day 5, you would have missed out on that. And so it's quite important to really think through what you want to get out of it beforehand as well, rather than just sort of what did I actually get out of this at the end. The other thing is I made actually once a list to Rosie, all the things you have to actually do in the evening. Yeah. And that can be quite taxing. So I haven't got this list with me now, but it really is, you arrive, you have to wash your pants, and you have to find something to eat, and then you have to find something for the next day, and then you have to write your postcard, and you have to find a postcard first, and then you have to stitch your embroidery thing, and then you have to book accommodation or connect with the people that you might be staying with, and then you expected to do your Instagram, and then you see that your Instagram is done poorly, then you better edit it. And sometimes it is easily 11 o'clock by the time you feel, yeah, you can now go to bed, something. And then, of course, it's a 9 to 5 job. It really is. You try to get out at 9, and you sort of hope that you finish at 5, and some days are longer. On occasion, you have a shorter day. So that's really something to think out as well, how much else you can take on, actually. Because the walking is actually the easy bit, It's really the easy bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. How far did you plan to walk each day? Did you know how far beforehand that you'd worked out?
I did plan it quite. I planned it through, and strangely, it almost completely stuck to. I knew I had to be on a certain day in Edinburgh for the for the festival, and I also knew that I could only start on a certain day because I had my PhD graduation in Aberdeen, so I had to go for Aberdeen straight up, and so I knew I could only start on that particular day in early July. So the days were fairly fixed, and I took every 10 days roughly a day off, and yeah. But let's say the accommodation, I kind of book ahead about 5, 6, 7 days ahead, because I always think, well, something could go wrong, and then you have paid all this accommodation, and you don't want that. But in fact, it was never sort of necessary. What was very nice, what I like very, very much is when you link with people that you somehow know in your life, or people like Helen, who suddenly she knew somebody else. In fact, I think through this network, who then read about it on the website and alarmed Helen, who happened to move to Golspie, and so. And then you have great evenings discussions. So they go beyond, what you normally do when you're in a B&B and just find something to eat. Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
My second,
yeah, go on, Quentin. Yeah, chip in, carry on.
Yeah, I was just wondering, does a walk have a structure that maybe life doesn't have, and is it that in some way quite reassuring and healing? Like this thing of getting up, and you kind of know what your day is going to be, and the physicality of that, and getting into flow. And
yeah, you're totally right. That's really what's happening. Maybe I haven't expressed it like that yet, but that's really this. What I love about it. You wake up and you know exactly what you're doing today, and that's what you're doing. And during the walk, you get actually very little disruptions. And that's what you're doing. It becomes more precarious when in the evening you have to deal with this sort of office stuff, But when you're at home, or you're in an office, or whatever your job is running, you're always multitasking with so many things. Whereas when you walk, you can actually not really multitask, because your feet just can go one by one. And well, I do carry a mobile phone, and therefore WhatsApp has come in. And I realized that when I did the home-to-home walk, which was the other the really long distance walk I did to Germany, there was no WhatsApp at that time, or at least I didn't have it, so it wasn't common yet. So that's 6 years ago, and so And then I almost thought, oh, that must have been nice. But it's not that I was on the WhatsApp all the time, you know. But I think it is very, very healing. And I often thought, if I'm completely stuck, you know, I would just go walking, maybe just give up having a house or something, and just my house is my rucksack. Having said that, I think it needs retirement, that rucksack. It does retirement. Mm-hmm.
Did you find, Claudia, did you find that you were seeking companionship? Were you seeking, did you find there were certain days when you were walking when you just really wished that you had someone to share what been going on at the end of the day, or you know what was going
I mean,
on?
I was mainly walking with Nick anyway, but I do love it, going to people where you then can share this and also share their lives and see how they live, and you understand more about the place, and that I totally love. And I think I do actually talk quite regularly to Hamish Fulton, who really enjoys so much to be just him and the landscape, and that's it. Whereas I certainly feel I have a much more female way of walking, where I'm seeking out people to chat to, and in on the one hand side, you know, it sounds sort of, I feel it sounds great that we walk. You walk and you actually never see anybody, which I almost can say apart from these 5 people. But to be totally honest, I would have liked to see more people and just chat on the way and change experiences and that sort of thing. I've done all the Munros in Scotland, and I always often felt, you know, you do a Munro and often you don't see one soul, and then sometimes you see somebody and you see them from the distance with their red anorak, and they come forward, and then I think, oh great, I can talk to somebody, and then they come and they just say hi, and then you just shoot past, and I get very disappointed actually. So yeah, I mean, you know, on the walk into Germany, because I knew, you know, I was really preparing that very well. I was seeking out all kind of people, old cousins that I had not seen for 40 years or something like that. And I ended up exactly half of that was a 90-day walk. Exactly half of the walk I stayed with people, and the other half I stayed in hostels or B&Bs and that kind of thing. And I thought that was very enjoyable to be able to share that with people. Mm-hmm. And I also, you know, it makes you almost a circle of friends or something. So what I now need to do, which I aim for just before Christmas, is to write to them all with some form of gift that I took from the walk. But what is actually a pain is sorting out your photos. Actually, that is so I don't know how I could take it. I don't know how to do that, but I think for next walk I will think about how do I deal with that in the future.
Well, I find it all fascinating. So one of the things that we talked about when you were here, Claudia, was how one might record the doubling back in journeys. So if you're walking a stretch to go and get accommodation, and then you have to go back, and then you have to do a journey again, did you record any of that? Because I personally found that quite an interesting aspect of your tour, that you see it from your feet. You might see it from a bus, you might see it from a lift. There are different ways of engaging with the landscape you're in, aren't they? And you meet different people when you do that.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I understand your question enough. I mean, there is one thing, you have these days lots of electronic devices, and they record all day.
No, I meant on your tablecloth, sorry.
Yeah, then you have the tablecloths, you know, so, but I guess it's, I don't know if that's what you're asking, but is these different layers I'm trying to, instead of thinking of it linear, and then you reach this village and then this village and this is the landscape here or something, I don't know, I didn't want to, I think it's more the different layers that you experience. So, for example, all these World War contraptions or some. I mean, there's so many other pictures I took. Like I took a lot of pictures of dog poo signage. Yeah, or there's some a lot of very aggressive dog poo, or some are really kind or some. But I mean, I have dozens of different sort of boxes of or also other these signage. I wished I had one, but you sort of do you know these sort of wooden things which are they say they just say love or something, you know, or you know, a sort of slogan, be always kind, or I don't know, these sort of things. And I don't know, I have these kind of layers that that would make out such a journey. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because it's repetitive. You come to all these places and suddenly you see again and again these kind of signs, in these places, and you just wonder why people hanging this up, or or you come to. I have something called hotel bedroom art. Yeah, so and you almost, I mean, in 80% of the places there's a Highland coo. Yeah, and you just think, well, and if there isn't a Highland coo, then there's a stag. And only very, very occasionally you see something else. And you just wonder why the people not putting something else up that maybe it refers more to that locality.
And that's very much a cultural thing too, isn't it? So you go to a different county, you'll have a different animal on the wall. I guess my last question is really, have you and again, it's a similar question. Have you recorded any of the anecdotes you've had with people along your way? Are they on the postcards?
They were quite encrypted in the postcards. And they can also be then, I mean, I type then the postcards up and they're on my blog, sort of. But they are encrypted in this kind of weird writing I do. Yeah. So, Jean, you were asking something.
Reading them.
Yeah, I spotted that Jean has put her hand up. What a good convention that is. Go for it, Jean.
Well, Claudia, I was just going to say that it was fascinating to me that you met up with a fellow rower and stayed with them, in fact, didn't you, Viv and John?
I think she's here as well. I see Viv.
Holliston.
I see Viv, the name at least there. I can't see her face.
Is she there? Oh, right.
Yeah,
anyway,
on my screen.
You know,
Viv, are you there?
No, I can't see her, but never mind. It was just that we've rowed together a lot and won quite a few medals, haven't we, Viv? And independently, you picked us. You didn't know that we knew each other, and you stayed with both of us. So I find that fascinating. And I just wondered if you saw any evidence of coastal rowing on all the walk down, because there are plenty of rowing clubs all the way down the East Coast.
Yes.
Did you see a few
you know,
boats
I did
out
see
on the water?
this kind of coastal rowing, which is kind of skiff rowing, is it called?
Yes, skiffs. Yeah.
So, and that was quite nice because we had long conversations, didn't we, Jean, up in Helmsdale where Jean lives. And then I walked down and, you know, watch out for these things more because maybe you don't think about it so much beforehand. And then the most funny thing was I then stayed with Viv, who is another friend who introduced me. I never knew Viv beforehand, but I do now. And then she was a very keen rower. And then I said, oh, have you also been to Ullapool? Because at the time when I was in Helmsdale, Jean was in Ullapool rowing with somebody from Colliston. And so that instantly gives you interesting conversations. And so I've now moved to a place called, to Portobello. And we're quite keen. I see the rowers almost daily out of my bedroom. Yeah. And it's something I'm quite keen to take up before long. Yeah. But the same is like with coastal swimming or something. I thought I would swim much more, but I swam actually very, very few times, mainly because very often far too high cliffs, you couldn't actually swim. And when it was possible, I don't know why I didn't then swim, because I don't know, you had just to finish your job for the day and didn't. So if a day was short, I would have considered it more. Yeah, I thought I would swim much more.
Anyway,
Thanks,
good.
Claudia.
The good news is we've got a couple more questions. So, Jean, thanks for waving. Good hand waving by you. Rosie, do you want to have a question?
I do. First of all, I'm sorry I can't get the camera working, but I'm so pleased to caught up with it. My question was about with strict discipline, 1 day off per 10. Did you at times, Claudia, find that overwhelming and want to stop completely? Get your notes, your thoughts, your experiences together, because this is something I myself definitely feel with walking, that I can't do too much of it at once. I need to kind of touch base, and I don't see it as defeat. I see it as kind of just being manageable. And yeah, I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are about that.
I hope I understood as well, because there's a little bit of an echo, but did you say the discipline, or whether you find it overwhelming to do this every day or something? Is that what you said?
Well, to only have 1 day off per 10.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I hadn't the strict deadline to come for that festival, I probably would have taken more days off. But as it was actually fine. And then when I did the walk to Germany, I planned to take the sort of weekends off almost. And then I just sort of didn't like it. Actually, I just sort of, well, what am I doing here now? So now I then decided on the walk to Germany that I changed tack and only took more days off when I wanted to visit people and stay a bit longer with them, where so like with the first day we took off was actually with Jean in Helmsdale, and that gives you the opportunity to really catch up, because it's also a little bit rude if you turn up there at 5 o'clock and now you need your shower and then you can use your washing machine and so on, and I need to finish dinner because I still have to do my Instagram or something. So it's actually quite nice to spend time with people and give this extra day or two even, and yeah, I think that's really how I feel now. That so the 10 days were kind of dictated by getting to the art festival, but it wasn't like I felt suffering for that, because it's sort of important that you sometimes take time off, because particularly you have to find a way of washing some stuff, and I don't know, also dealing with life or admin or something, or spending a bit more time to talk to my mother or something. But otherwise, if I had too much time off, I wasn't always, I don't know. It's different. But now while I'm talking, I'm interrupting myself. But I also said sometime, I think, because last year I did a walk from mountain to sea, from Ben McDoy to Peterhead, and it's a different commission where I was asked to really talk to people about their experiences in COVID, and in collaboration we should come up with a monument to COVID experience in our shire, and Scotland has done that, given that to every shire in local authority in Scotland, and some people make a monument, a sculpture, and some maybe make a book. Whereas I propose to make this long distance walk that comes from the Cairngorm Mountains to the sea. And there, because I had to that was part of the project, to talk to a lot of people, I never walked more than 10 kilometers, and then spent the whole next day off and just talking to people. But that was part of the job also, to talk to all these people. But I enjoyed that also very much, because then I actually got to know those villages better, which I think now, when I walk every day my 20 kilometer or so, that I sort of scout around for some food and you see the place a bit, but you don't actually take so much time in just really going around to see all the kind of corners of it. So I think there was a moment where I at least said people and say, maybe if I had all time in the world, I should only do 10 kilometers and then have the afternoon off and the next day off, and just give myself, I probably would give myself some other chores, knowing myself, to do them in that place and discover the place more.
I can well see now how your pattern from doing that one to the sea and it being so much to do with conversations. That's such a big part of how you walk, really. Yeah.
Get your ideas for the next art projects. Do you get them on the walk when you're basically getting a bit bored, not really looking too hard at the landscape anymore because it might be quite repetitive? And do you then set the moment when your brain really kicks in, or when does it happen?
I think walking, I think all of you know that, is gives you an opportunity to mull over things, you know. I've always used it as my therapy, you know. It saved me a lot of therapist costs, and because even if I used to run an organization with a lot of staff, and it was really quite intense always, and I knew it was off. I go on the weekend, I go walking, and I'll walk it all off, and so, but likewise, you come sort of with a solution because you mull it over, and you come with a solution. Whereas if you're sort of lying at bed at night and you sort of don't come up with that thing, you know. And likewise, when you are in normal working days, it's you never have expanded time to think about something, so you have to almost think about it in a meeting and come up with this idea. But Rosie was very kind, and she asked whether I had some ideas, and I had a bank of 3. And and in the end, we chose this one for this project. So I do still have another bank of ideas somewhere. Watch this space. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to put my hand up and admit to something shocking. I don't know. Back in 1992, I wrote. I was commissioned by an outfit which is now called Visit Scotland, to write a handbook for accommodation providers for encouraging sustainable tourism. That was in 1992, which is terrifying to think, A, I'm that old, and B, that they actually believed what I wrote, because the evaluation afterwards came back quite a lot, where accommodation providers were saying, "Oh my God, we never thought about thinking about walkers or cyclists." They actually had never thought about it. And I wonder, of the people that the accommodation providers that weren't friends or relations that you met on your walk, did you find that they were welcoming to walkers, or did you find, because there aren't that many walkers like you had already said, that they've actually were welcoming but didn't quite know how to accommodate you? Does that make sense?
I mean, I definitely felt always welcomed. There's no doubt about it. Most amazing was sort of up there in Dunbeath, I think it was, sort of quite north still, and it's quite a long walk, and that it actually did rain there, and I said, oh God, walking there, and this was the accommodation really in the middle of nowhere, and the idea of then finding food would be another 3 miles and then have to walk back 3 miles. This is sort of the issue, is that often people accommodate a lot of drivers, and so let's say this whole Airbnb culture is so much, it's not Airbnb, there's no breakfast even most of the time, So I actually always, before a book, say, well, do you provide something? If I'm not fussy, but I need some food in the evening and some food in the morning, and they always did, Sometimes they just said, well, just eat with us then, and that place in Dunbeath, we said, yeah, we just cook for you, and then they were standing there and already with the newspaper to stuff into your boots, and the Tannock tea cake, and and then when I sat down for dinner, you get your Cullen skink and your fish and homemade fish and chips and your Cranach, and you just think, oh my God, I'm too stuffed to walk again. You know, yeah. Hmm. So so that was very good. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, good. Well, I mean that's good news.
It
Something
was
I
very
don't.
good. But it's interesting because I know also you know, the West Highland Way, for example, is the opposite. It's totally overcrowded. I mean, I hear this from lots of people. I did the West Highland Way, I think it's 20 years ago now, or maybe, yeah, something like 20 years ago, and it was very busy then. And it is always sort of a bit what the tourist industry tells people to do. And it has a sort of quite romantic name, I think, West Highland Way, and lots of people from abroad go there. Also, of course, British people to do that. And it's very crowded, and it's almost impossible to find accommodation unless you book months and months and months ahead.
Yeah. I think the commercial walking holiday companies have how can one say, booked many places ahead of the individual who might be walking and not plan things so far in advance.
Yeah, exactly. That's what happens. And so it's interesting, sort of, how do you strike that balance, I used to also work in the tourist industry where I was in Aberdeenshire. I ran a place called Duff House. It was an outstation of the National Galleries, and it's like a castle or manor house. And I also worked for quite a long time at Glenfiddich. And so Glenfiddich is big time tourism. But at Duff House, we were sort of happy with every person that would come along, and it was a big drive to increase tourism in that area. And it has actually never worked that well. Not so many tourists come to Aberdeenshire, which is in a way a shame, because I always think it's interesting to go to places where not so many people go. But then it's also cool where, for example, I went for years and years to the Isle of Skye, and now it's almost impossible to go there unless you go in the middle of the winter, because they put even signs on the bridge in Inverness saying, "Don't go to Isle of Skye, we have no accommodation." Yeah, and so it's very difficult for local people to actually. So actually, a lot of places where the tourists want to go to, like cafes, have to close because they can't find the staff, because there's no accommodation.
Well, you're steeped in lots of experience through what you did in Huntly, and we take our hats off to you with Devon Arts and the projects that you did, which have been fantastic. Anyway, has anyone else got any questions of Claudia, or shall we give her the last word and wrap it up?
Ooh, last word. I think everybody to come tonight, and I also particularly thank the companions that are here that walked with me. Like there's this Andrea who walked for a day with me, and those people who gave me accommodation and meals and cooking together. It's all marvelous, and I just look forward to the next experience. And if you want to walk with me, please get in touch, or if you just want to read a bit more, look at my website.
Claudia, a very big thank you.
Good, my pleasure. Thank you.